Hey everyone, welcome back to another tutorial. In this tutorial, I will be building this simple weather app that fetches the data from an open source API, which is called the Open Weather API. And what this app does is when you open it, by default, it fetches users' current location using the latitude and longitude, but also allows user to search for weather information in any city around the world using the API. So as you can see, this is currently fetching my local locations weather. It's cloudy here, and if we search for any other city, let's search for Manukau, it would be the same weather because that's not far from here. Let's search for some other countries. Sydney is also cloudy. Now one more thing to notice, that the icon you see in the middle, it's also changing dynamically, which I'm not fetching from the API, but I have imported few icons from the React icons library, and those icons are changing dynamically. So if I search for Mumbai, and you can see that the icon changes based on this condition. So let's search New Delhi, and it's missed over there, so I provided this. Let's search for something else. So let's see if it's raining in Meghalaya. It's not. So if it's raining, then this icon will be like a raining icon. But let's search something sunny. So if it's sunny, then we'll see this icon. So all of that is done within React and TypeScript in just one component, and we have used style component for styling it. That's not a crucial part of my tutorial because I don't really focus on the CSS, but I will show you how to create this UI as well, and then we can go ahead and start creating this nice looking simple with the API app. So let's go ahead and do this. So here I have my VS Code open, and we are gonna start from scratch. Currently I'm not in any directory, so I'm gonna open the terminal. Just go to my tutorial, in this one, and here we are gonna install the React app with the TypeScript configuration. So npx create React app, and you can name it a weather app, whatever you like. Now for TypeScript, we go template TypeScript, and I'll wait until this installs.
A few moments later.
Okay, now that that app has been installed, we will go into that directory, cd weather app, and then we will start the app. So if you're using npm, you can do npm start. I'm using yarn, so I'm gonna hit yarn start, and obviously we'll get this default React app, and here we are in the directory. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna clean up this extra file that we don't need. We don't need app.tsx, index.css, svg, all these files, they're just extra. We can delete them, and now we'll have some error in the terminal because that obviously we have errors because we have removed some files and they are still imported. So let's clean up this. Just clean up the whole thing, just keep the app, and inside the index.tsx we get rid of this, we get rid of this, we also get rid of this. So we got that clear, it's all empty. Let's also clear our public folder and also the favicon. So now we have a clean empty React project. We can start from the scratch, and first thing we should be doing is we're gonna want to create that UI. So we'll go inside the source file, and this is like the most crucial part of React project. You always have to create a folder when you're dealing with components. So just create a folder inside your source directory and name it components. And inside this I'm going to create the main component that we'll be using. I'm going to name it display weather.tsx because we are doing TypeScript. So this, let's just leave it like this and call it inside our parent. Let's import the display weather and see if we can see anything here. let's try to refresh this. There you go, display weather. So our component is rendering correctly, and now we can go ahead start creating our classes. So what we have here is a container that holds all the classes to display the data. So we are gonna come up here, and I'm gonna actually, before we start, we need to install 3 libraries that we're gonna use in this project. So I want you to open your terminal. If you want to split it, the first thing we're gonna need is Axios, because we're gonna use Axios to send an HTTP request. This is a JavaScript library that you use when we are sending the API request. So we can use the npm install Axios. And now the second one we gonna need is styled components. So npm install styled components. The last one we're gonna need is the React icons, because you see these icons, all these icons, I'm getting it from React. So in order to install that, npm install React icons -- save. So now we have got our packages installed. We can go ahead, close this one, close all these files. And what I want you to do is create a CSS file. You can actually create a separate folder when you're working with many different components, or you can just simply create a file. So I'm just gonna name this file my weather.module.ts. Now we'll have error here because this module file has to export and import something. So we will import the styled components here, and then we will export const main. You can name these whatever you want, it's totally up to you. Styled dot, we're gonna treat it as a div. This is what we are using to style our app. So style as a div, and now we can import main wrapper from this file. Why did I get an angular weather.module.tss icon here? I don't know why that icon is. Maybe it has to do something with the name. So let's name it styles.module.ts. Okay, that's coming as an angular name. That's probably my icon. So this main wrapper is now will be this parent div for this whole container. So whatever the style goes in here will apply to whatever inside these. So that's done. Now we're gonna need a container. So I'm gonna create a class here, container. Inside this we obviously have a search area which is flexing. So search area, and then we have an input which will be our input for the search. So type text, it has a placeholder, enter a city, and then the value and on change event we will provide it later when we actually implement the search functionality. So that's the div search area is done. Now we need another div inside this, which will be the search circle, and then it's also gonna have an icon which we will just import here. So we're gonna go to the React icon and get that icon from there. So search circle would have, like I said, an icon. So we are gonna go to React icons, search, and the one I'm using is AI outline search. So this is, you can just find any icon you want. If you want to change around your icon, you can come up here and search it. So we are going to import that icon first, and the icons are always imported inside curly braces. Where are they imported from? React icons slash the AI. Why AI? Because this icon has AI coming from that folder. So now this icon here, and we can also provide this icon its own class. So class name search icon. Now let's see how the things starting to come together. So yeah, so once we're done with the search icon, now we can move out of this div because this is the container. Okay, so search area should be inside this div should be wrapped inside this. So that's the whole search area. Now the search area is done, we can go ahead and we can create the weather area. So weather area, which is this area, this div. As you can see, I'm hovering over this, and the weather area would have a title, a country, an icon. So the first thing first we're gonna do is we're gonna give it an h1 for name. So I'm gonna name it hardcode for now. We will replace this with the dynamic data, Auckland, and I will name the country here in a span NZ, and then we'll have a class called icon. In this one we will have icons. For right now I'm just gonna say icon because this is where we will change the icons dynamically. So that div is done, we can come out of that. Now we need the main temperature here, so we have the temperature and clouds which are also inside that div. So this will be an h1, let's say 18 Celsius. I don't have a degree symbol, and an h2 for cloudy. So this is how it's looking like at the moment. And then once we're done with that one, we need to have the bottom section. So let's go ahead, and after the weather area we can have another class here, bottom info area, and inside this we need humidity, and this would be an icon. So humidity, so this is the icon we are using, I believe. Yes, we need to import it first, so just gonna copy that down, and this one is from WI, and this humidity icon can also have a class itself. So this would be wind icon. So inside this we have the humidity icon. Once that's done, we need an h2 tag. Let me see. So we have this, now we have this flexing next to it, so we can come down there. After the humidity label and icon, we can create another class here. So we're gonna create another class right below this because we want to flex them with each other. So this would be the humid info, and inside this we'll open a h2 tag and we will write humidity, not humidity, 60% humidity. So this should be okay. What is the y here? So that's for the humidity, and we should have that and this done. Now after that we're gonna create another div for the wind side. which is this, and inside this we're gonna get an icon. So let's go ahead and search for the icon, which would be si wind. So this is the icon, and this is coming from the si, and this icon would have its own class, which I will just name wind icon. So both of these icons will have same styles applied to each one of them. And once we are done with that class, we can again come down just like that. I'm just gonna copy this, and this would be like 2.56 kilometer an hour. Wind speed. So that's getting there. Wind speed is there. Okay, we have, so we have go wind inside this, and then we humid info is there. Okay, so my bad, this should be the same as this because I forgot to apply this class here. This should also be wrapped inside a div to have the flex box. So with that done, now we have a parent div which is the wind, yes, and then we have the icon, and then we have the humid info, and then the container. So that's it for the classes and the divs, and I think we can come to our CSS. So I'm gonna open this on this side, open this on that side. Let me hide the terminal. Now what I want you to do is that we're not gonna create these styles here, custom CSS, because that will take another 20-30 minutes and this video will be longer for no reason. So please go into the description, there's a link for the CSS file. It's a Google Drive link, and then if you click on it you will be redirected to this file here. And all I want you to do is just click on anywhere and Control A everything, Control C, copy this, come back to this, do this. So Control A here and then Control V here. So once you've done that, now we have the CSS inside that module file. If we go back here and check this, this is how it will look like. So as you can see, this is already starting to look like this, but there are some difference because we're not passing it the icons and the data is not dynamic, it's very static. So now we're gonna go inside the React icons, then we're gonna close the CSS because we're done with it. Now whatever we're gonna do is we will be just fetching the information from the API, but first thing first, we're gonna get some icons that we need. So we are gonna go to this one, and I'm gonna search for the icon which will be the BS fill sun fill. So this first one, this is for our clear weather condition. So when the conditions is clear like this, so we're gonna render this icon. Then we just gonna come down here, I'm gonna copy this down, BS we fill from the BS, and this, how many, we're gonna need 4 icons from the same directory. So we are gonna come up here, I'll just gonna put them here. So the second icon we're gonna need is BS cloudy fill. As you can see, it has that, so that one. The third one we're gonna use is BS fill cloud rain. So if you can see, cloud rain and rain fill, maybe not. So let's search this one since this one doesn't exist up here. So we're gonna come up here, I'm gonna put rain, BS cloud fill rain, it's this one. Copy paste that one there, and the last one from the BS directory would be cloud fog to fill. That's done. Now we're gonna need more icons, which will be, so we have got the humidity here. Yes, we don't need this. We got the wind CSS. Now we're gonna need an icon from another directory. The one we need is the RI loader fill. This icon will be used for the loading when we refresh our app. So if you don't know what I mean, it's this one. As you refresh your app, you see this icon, so that's done. Now we need one more icon, which will be TI with a, let's put TI here, TI with a partially sun. So this one. Now we have this. Well, we should have 1 2 3 4 5 6 icons. So that's the icons for our UI. Now we will move ahead and try to fetch the actual data from the API. In order to do that, we need the API key and we need the API endpoint that we're gonna send a request to. So what I'm gonna do is, here I'm gonna paste this API key and API endpoint. You can pause the screen and copy it down. So this is my API key and this is the endpoint we are going to send a request in order to get the data. So once we have that, we need to create a function. So I'm gonna create an arrow function, const fetch local weather, or I will just name it fetch weather rather than, so fetch current weather. An arrow function takes no parameters, and inside this we now gonna import our Axios which we installed earlier. So import Axios from Axios, and in this function we're gonna store this URL, const URL, and here we're gonna use the template literals, and I'm gonna pass it the API endpoint, this one, and then where I'm gonna send it to, what I'm gonna tell that endpoint that what I'm actually looking for. We're looking for weather from the latitude, and this one actually this should take 2 parameter, which will be the latitude, and since we're using TypeScript, it has to be a number. If it was JavaScript, you would get away with this without even providing it any type. So this also a number, so we're gonna pass that information. Weather latitude would be latitude here. We will fetch the longitude same way, longitude, and once we have done that, we're gonna provide it our app ID, which is our API key in this case. So app ID is the API key. Without this whole endpoint is useless. And after the API key, we're gonna tell that link that we want the weather units to be metric, which is Celsius. So this link is stored inside this URL. Now we can make a response. We're gonna send a request using the Axios and store it in a response variable, which will await. So this has to be an asynchronous function, await, and Axios.get method. Inside get method, you usually pass your link that you are sending request to, but we have already stored that in the URL, so we're gonna pass it the URL, and then we're gonna return. Okay, this is not right. Response. So get rid of this response.data. So once we have that, now we need to create a use effect hook inside this. So react.use effect, and this function, this use effect hook, inside this we will actually use the navigator dot geolocation dot get current location. So this is built in JavaScript functionality. It's not like I'm defining them. So this is how you actually fetch users current position. And this has to be inside this. not bad. Position, so we get the position and then we destruct it from the latitude and longitude. So over here it has to be latitude because this is what we are sending the request. That's what actually this is how the naming convention is on the get current position. So latitude and longitude, if there's a spelling mistake in this one, we will get an error straight away. And then we're gonna get the position dot coordinates. Once we have that, now we will use the promise dot all, and we will get results as fetch current weather. So what are we passing? We're passing those two parameters. We're passing the latitude and longitude to this function here. So that takes latitude and longitude. Once that's done, what we want to do is then dot then, and we can destructure the current result. So current weather from here, and then what we can do, we can console.log current weather. So longitude, I think there's a spelling mistake, that's why it does not exist on that. So longitude, see that little spelling mistake, you won't get it because it has to be exactly as that. So now we have console log this, we can go there and see if our app is actually fetching something. So I'm going to console, go to the console, and we are getting here errors. There are so many errors we're getting. Should get away now. There you go, we are already fetching the data. So as you can see, the console log is working. I'm going to refresh this one more time. So you see it takes some time to actually discover the current location of the user. So you can see I'm getting my current location as vary, temperature and everything. So if you look at the other one, if I close this one here, this is my current location. I'm going to refresh this, and we can see the current location, country, the temperature. So that's all information is in this console log. So what is happening? This parameter holds everything that's coming from the API. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a use state hook here, const, to actually store it in a state variable. So I will name it the weather data, set weather data, use react.use state, and then this we gotta provide it the TypeScript here because this isn't enough. So the next thing, we're gonna go into our console log, we're gonna check what we are actually fetching. So we're gonna fetch first thing first, we're gonna fetch from the main the actual temperature, and then we're gonna fetch the name. So we can see that main is an object which holds temperature as a number. So I think this magenta color is a purple color, whatever it is, it's the numbers, and the cyan color is the string. So the only two things we are fetching here as a string is this one, the country name, and the name of your current location. The rest is all numbers. If we go into SYS, yeah, that's the only thing we're getting from there. And then we are showing humidity here, so that must be inside the, oh yeah, and then we're gonna fetch these two things as string as well from main. So clouds and broken clouds. The rest, humidity is number, wind is number. So let's go ahead and declare the types for this. So we tell our app that, hey, we are expecting this data from this API, but make sure that this data is exactly as I want it. So it has to be string. It you know, in JavaScript it could be number and you wouldn't see the error. So that's how you handle the errors with TypeScript. So here is how you can declare the types. So we come up there all the way above the component interface, I'm gonna name it weather data props, or you can name it weather data types. So we are fetching a name which is directly accessible. I believe it's just gonna keep throwing those errors until I interface with the data prop because of this, obviously. So I'm just gonna see one more time what we have here. So the name is directly accessible, as you can see. ID is directly accessible. DT, the only things that are inside an object are the main is an object and it has humidity, temperature. So we're gonna fetch the name directly, and then we're gonna come to the main. We are gonna create it as an object. From inside this, we're gonna get the temperature as a string, and we're gonna get the humidity as, wait, my bad, humidity, and this is not string, it's number. Humidity is also a number. So comma that. Now we're gonna get out of this object. The other thing we need is city and the country name. So the name we already getting, but the country name is inside the sys object. So sys, and from this we're gonna fetch the country as a string. So this is done, and the last thing we need is wind, which is also inside an object. The speed of wind is number. And not last thing, we need one more thing. The most crucial thing is the weather, which is also an object, and weather holds the description and the main, but we're gonna get the main as a string. So main, what is main is what the condition is cloudy, raining, or whatever. So these are the things we are going to fetch from there. And since the weather is an array, so I'll also try to see if we can fetch description, but I'm pretty sure we won't, since this is an array. So we have to declare it as an array. Now that we have done the TypeScript, we can provide that to this. So this would take this, or it's either these props or it's null, because when we haven't fetched the data, it's definitely null, and this state would by default will be null. So now what's happening here, I declare these props that I'm telling this useState variable, which is gonna hold everything that coming from this function, that whatever you're holding, make sure they are like the temperature is a number and humidity is a number. So we're gonna get the set data. Instead of the console log, we're gonna pass set data current weather to this. Now this variable holds everything that we were seeing on the console log. So once that's done, let's test it. Now we're gonna come down here. It's time to display our weather up here and get rid of this static data. So let's go, and if we come up here, we need to be weather area. So this search stays above. Over here we're gonna get weather data and everything inside this. So I'm going to put this, actually I'm going to put everything inside this as a fragment. So accept the container. So we have got weather data. If weather data exists, then what are we gonna do? We're gonna change that name to what? To weather data dot. There you go. Now then we have name here, and with that we're gonna come back to our app, and we're gonna see it. There you see it's now fetching the default location. So that's coming dynamically. So we done that, but now we need the NZ. So country, let's try country with weather data dot sys dot country. So with that done, we are getting the country as well. So this is how simply you can just pass. Once you have the UI ready, you just create a function that send a request to the HTTP server. That request gets stored into a useState variable, and now this useState variable have access to all the data which we can pass to our UI. So the temperature here, which will be weather, I think, which is the main weather data.main dot temperature, and here this would be the main. So this is the weather data dot, let's see where there's the temperature, humidity, weather. So this is this main, not this main. This is the weather inside the main, I mean the main inside the weather. So weather, since this is an array, so we have to do the element 0 and then dot main. So now let's go ahead and check if we are actually displaying that. So I'm gonna refresh this. Boom, 286. Oh my god, it cannot be 286 degrees Celsius. Let's check the console. Okay, we're getting 286 degrees Celsius, so that means there's something wrong in my API, which could be the API endpoint with the okay, there it is. Make sure you don't have any space in between these, otherwise you will get error like this, 286 degrees Celsius. Let's try to refresh this, and now we're getting the exact temperature. Now we're gonna get the humidity and this dynamically as well, the wind. So let's get rid of this weather data dot main dot humidity and a percentage sign, obviously. Yeah, this is humidity obviously, and the wind would be weather data dot wind dot speed, km per hour. Now let's refresh that. So there it is. We're gonna compare it with our console log. So we're getting the name as Weary, yeah, the country as New Zealand, and temperature 13.14, which is rendering into the 0, and then we have 66% wind speed is 2.57, yeah, perfect, and the humidity should be inside the main, which is 66%. So we are getting the accurate data except the icon only. So let's try to get the icon. In order to render the icons dynamically, we have to create another function. So I'm just going to come down here and create a function, name it icon changer, pass it a parameter weather, which will be a type of string, and inside this I'm going to provide the types for icons, which will be react node, and then the type for the icon color. So icon color would be string. Now we'll create a switch statement here. Inside this we'll pass the parameter weather, and in case of rain we want to render the icon element, which will tell us which icon do we want to render here. So we want to render the BS fill, this one, so this icon. So we're now using these icons that we declared earlier, and this will be self close, and the color for this one, icon color, this one would be in hexadecimal, so 272829. And then once we've done that, we will break this. Now I still have some error because it doesn't have a default statement, so we'll first do that. Default would be icon element, and the default icon would be TI weather partially sunny, I don't know how you pronounce that word. So icon color by default should be #7B2869. so that's the default color, and if we're still having issue there, so that because of this obviously. So in the case of rain, what am I doing? This is not how you declare case. We will do this. Now I'm gonna copy this down. Value never used. So I'm going to copy this down as twice. So this case would be clear, and we're going to change the icon to BS fill sun fill, and also the color that we will change to FFC 436, and copy this down one more time. Make sure this is correct as it comes from the API, because otherwise this condition wouldn't match. So clear clouds, and this icon would be BS cloudy fill. The color for this would be 10 to C57. So the last one we're gonna use is the mist. And the icon for the mist, we're gonna use BS cloud fog to fill. The color for this would be 279E FF. So I have got some error here which says okay, because they haven't used, so we will use them later. And then inside this, after this, we're going to return a span that we're going to provide to our icon. Where we have the icon, we're going to replace it with that. So once we're done with that one, we are going to, this function will return span with a class name icon. Make sure your class name is naming is as it is in my code, otherwise the CSS file wouldn't work. So that's done. Styles, color, icon, color. And now we're gonna pass that icon element, this one. Okay, this is a React node, so this has to go like this. So now with that done, all we have to do is we're just gonna scroll down where we have that icon. So wherever we're displaying that icon, in this case it should be the class icon here, this text icon. So now what we can do here, we can remove this and we can do icon changer, pass it the weather data dot weather from the first element and main. So now let's refresh this. Boom, error. First thing first, we got an error. No, we didn't. We get the icon. There you go, the cloudy icon is there. So now we can see that the icon is changing dynamically and being applied to that. How do we know that icon is even changing dynamically? We can go to the sensors and try another location, because right now we don't have the search functionality. There you go, it's raining in London and the icon has changed to rain. Let's try Moscow, cloudy, probably Berlin. There you go. So the icons are changing dynamically as well, you can see. So now that we have got all this set up, the next thing we're gonna wanna do is set up the search functionality, because right now our search button doesn't do anything. Before we move on to the search, I want to do one more thing, that our published version has a loading spinner here, as you can see. So we will go ahead and add that loading spinner, because without the loading state our current app looks like this. So when we refresh this, it just shrinks. because there's no data available. So let's go ahead and create that loading state. In order to do that, I'm gonna come up to the use states. So over here, const, and I'm gonna create it is loading. Okay, set is loading. This will be a use state, obviously, react.use state, and by default we're gonna set it to false. And when do we actually wanna set this to true? When the data is being fetched, right? So that's where is that happening? That's happening inside our use effect here. So before the data is being fetched, we will set this as true. So now the loading state will be true, and once that's done, now we're gonna come down here. I'm gonna pass it and is loading. So we're gonna conditionally render that if its loading is true, then we're gonna do this. So that's happening there, and then after this we will have a div. This will be the loading state, so we can name that div loading, and I believe we don't need this here. So this loading div will have an icon which we declared up there, if you remember, ri loading, class name loading icon, and then let's just format this, and below this we will add a text called loading. So now that this loading class inside our CSS, if we come down here, so this is our loading class and this is the loading icon. So this is how you rotate that static icon using keyframes in CSS. So I'm using this keyframe that from 0 degree to 360 degree it will rotate, and it's rotate and linear infinite, so it just keeps on rotating, and I'm providing that to the loading icon. So with that, it should now spin as it is already spinning. Let me check if this is the demo version or the published version. Okay, so this is the published version, this is the demo version that we're working on. Let's refresh this. You can see that loading. Nice. So we get a nice loading effect. Before that we're just seeing a shrink box. Now that looks much better. So with that done, let's go ahead and create the search functionality. Now in order to get that search input to work, we need three things. We need a use state variable to store the user input inside that state variable. We need a function that will have another endpoint that we will send the search input to, and then we need another handle function that will handle that search input. So first of all, we're going to create a use state here. Const search city, set search city. Again, you can name them whatever you want, it's totally up to you. And then react.use state, and then we have to pass it string because we are telling TypeScript that it has to be a string. Well, if you do that, you don't really have to say that. React.use state. When you actually do this, so what am I getting here is use state doesn't return type. Did you mean use state? Okay, my bad. Yes, I did mean use state. Can you please change that? So yeah, like I provided the type string, but I'm also providing it in empty string, which is type annotation, so it knows by default that I'm expecting a string. And once we've done that, now we can get the search city. We can scroll down to the input part where we have the input. So let's go down to our input. Here we are. So inside this, our input will take a value. The value will be search city, and then an on change event, which will be in which we will set that value, set search city to the event or target dot value on your key press. So event should be set search city e.target.value. So that's done. Now we can come up here. It's time to create another function, so we will do that below this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this, I'll just create it here. So that this is where we will create the function with another endpoint that will take the parameter which we will be getting from the user. So this function is gonna be const fetch weather data, and then it will take city as a string, and also this would be an asynchronous function, so async, and an arrow function. We will use the try and catch block. So const weather response await axios dot get. Now we're gonna send that. We'll just do it the way that we did it before, so we won't do that. We will declare a variable here, const URL again. You can keep it as URL because this is a different function block than this, so that doesn't really affect that. So template literals, first thing first, API endpoint. Now we are changing something here. We are getting weather query. We're gonna pass it that parameter city. This is what user will input something in the search bar that will get stored into this city that will send to this weather API. So city, and then we'll pass it the app ID, which in this case is our API key. That we can get the response. So search response would be await axios dot get, and now rather than passing the link we can pass it the URL. So we're getting that link from there. Now we're gonna destructure the results from this. So current search results. Now we're gonna pass it the props, where the data props which we declared up here, these ones. So we want those search result also. We're providing the type safety to this as well, and then there would be the search response dot data. So with that we will return current search results, and here we will catch the error. If there's any error during this API request, we will store those in console.error no data found, or whatever you can say here. So that function is done. Now we need to create the other function that will handle the search results. So that function will get executed upon clicking this icon, so we can provide it on click, handle search. So now because I haven't declared this function, so I'm going to come up here again, right below the fetch function, const handle search, and this will also be an asynchronous function. So we don't want to search anything if that input is empty. So search city dot trim is equal to empty, and then we will just return, else we will try. Now again we are using try and catch block, so if there's any error during our searching process, const get the current search results await fetch. Now we're calling that function, this function, fetch weather data, and then we're gonna pass it what, search city. So search city. So we are currently getting an error on this one. I believe that's because we need to rethrow the error up there, but first let's go declare our catch block. So catch. And now we're getting this error is this declared value is never read, and I think because we're not rethrowing the error inside the fetch weather data. So what is happening here is, like, if we want the handle search function, this function, to properly handle error that occurs in this function, we need to make sure that the errors are rethrown inside this function so that they can caught and handle in this function, right? So throw error. Now with that, you can see that warning is gone away. And what we're gonna do here, we're gonna set search city to that current weather data. I believe that should do that. Set city does not assign to the type set string. Okay, so maybe because of this. Now I got another error here. So you're telling me argument set search city. Set search city is not. Oh, actually my bad. It has to be not set search city, set weather data. So now with that done, I think our app should be working and the search functionality should also be working. So let's search for Auckland. Boom, there you go guys, the app is working perfectly fine. So now we search that one city. Let's search New Delhi, and you can see that the icon changes dynamically. So Moscow, just trying to see if we could find anything with the raining weather. So I'm gonna search Meghalaya, because why not? There you go, it's always raining in Meghalaya. And I believe in this one the h1 tag is a little bit bigger, but you can provide some padding around. So we're gonna see, go to our container, and our container doesn't have any, it does have padding, so let's make it 2 rem. There you go. So now we have more padding here, and this is perfectly fine. So it's working just like this one. Now we have this app. Let me just get rid of the geolocation because it's just by default shows me Berlin, so no override. Let's go to the local locations. So it's gonna fetch my current location. That's it. There, as you can see, that temperature over here is 11 degree, pretty cold out there. And search for something really hot, which could be, I don't know, maybe a city in India, because it's really hot out there at the moment. 74% humidity, 32 degrees Celsius. So that's working fine. New York. So there you have it guys. Now we have created this application using the TypeScript and the OpenWeather API, and now we have see how we can use those icons dynamically and change them conditionally as well, so based on what actually the condition is for the weather. And I would suggest you, if you want to do something else with this app, because right now if you look at this is just a mess. This is not a good practice. What we can do, I'll probably create another part for this where I will show you how we can refactor this code, because trust me guys, if a senior developer looks at this, he's gonna be really mad, because we're doing everything in just one component. What we can do is we can take these function into a module file, and then we can just export them here. So we'll only end up with this use effect, and this we can also split this into different components if we want to. We can split the search into another component and call it here. We can split the middle part, but yeah, that's for the next video. This is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching this, and I wish you best of luck. Keep trying, keep coding, and see if you can do more with this app. Thank you again.